It is an early April morning in 1789, and aboard a ship in the South Pacific Ocean near the island chain of Tonga, a large group of men surround their captain, but his hands are bound. Leading the crowd is a man brandishing a bayonet and instructing the men to find a boat to set their captain adrift on. These men are British sailors aboard the ship known as the HMS Bounty, and they are committing mutiny. The HMS Bounty was built in a shipyard in 1784 in the city of Hull in Yorkshire, England. Originally it was called the Bethia, but it was renamed by the Royal Navy upon being purchased in 1787. It was bought to transport breadfruit plants from Tahiti to the West Indies. Command of the ship was given to Lieutenant William Bligh, who had sailed with the famous Captain James Cook. The crew consisted of 46 men, with warrant officers directly beneath Bligh, appointed by the Navy Board, and headed by Sailing Master John Fryer. Most of the Bounty's crew had been chosen by Bligh. The Bounty attempted to set sail from Dartmouth on November 28th, but couldn't make it out of the harbor for a month due to contrary winds, with the ship actually departing on December 28th. Initially, the ship was intended to sail around Cape Horn in South America to get to Tahiti, but contrary wind prompted the Captain Bligh to receive permission to take an alternate route around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. As the ship sailed into its route, Bligh introduced a strict disciplinary routine with a new watch system. However, according to Sam McKinney, the ship's historian, Bligh enforced his rules with a fanatical zeal, continually fussing and fuming over the cleanliness of his ship and food served to his crew. Fletcher Christian was a master's mate aboard the Bounty during its fateful expedition, but Bligh took a liking to Christian, naming him acting lieutenant. A week after Christian's promotion, Bligh ordered the flogging of a man named Matthew Quintal for insolence and mutinous behavior. As the Bounty approached Cape Horn on April 3rd, it encountered a severe storm, which Bligh described as exceeded what I have ever met with before, with severe squalls of hail and sleet. By the 17th of April, Bligh ordered his men to make harbor in the Cape, stating that the sea had beaten them. The men spent 5 weeks at False Bay, east of the Cape, repairing and reprovisioning the ship. The ship departed across the Indian Ocean on July 1st. The men sailed toward Tasmania in cold winter conditions as they were in the southern hemisphere, reaching Adventure Bay in Tasmania on August 21st. The men spent their time in Tasmania replenishing their food and water supplies and collecting timber to repair the ship. The first sign of disagreement between Bligh and his crew occurred when the captain got in an argument with William Purcell, the ship's carpenter, over Purcell's methods for wood cutting. Bligh ordered Purcell back on the ship, and when Purcell refused, Bligh withheld his rations. Clashes continued between Captain Bligh and his crew in the final leg of the journey to Tahiti. By October, Warrant Officer John Fryer, shipmaster of the Bounty, refused to sign the ship's accounting books until Bligh gave him a certificate attesting that he had been completely competent throughout the voyage. Upon this, Bligh summoned the crew and began reading the British Articles of War, a regulatory document for the British Armed Forces, causing Fryer to yield. The ship's surgeon, Thomas Huggins' careless bloodletting led to the death of crew member James Valentine while treating him for asthma. Huggins reported that Valentine died of scurvy, which led Bligh to change medical regulations aboard his ship. Huggins was constantly drunk until Bligh confiscated his supply. The HMS Bounty reached Tahiti on October 26, 1788. Bligh's first action in Tahiti was to secure the cooperation of the local leadership, along with the King of Tahiti, Pomare I. Bligh presented the leaders with gifts and told them his King George only wanted breadfruit plants in return, to which the Tahitians happily obliged. Bligh assigned Christian as the head of a shore party to establish a compound where the plants would be grown. The crew's 5-month stay in Tahiti saw many of them lead promiscuous lives with the local women, including Christian, who formed a relationship with a woman named Nuatoa, who he gave the name Isabella. Bligh remained disciplined, but tolerated the activities of his men. Huggin died on December 10th, attributed by Bligh to his alcoholism. By January, 3 crew members attempted to desert, but were found 3 weeks later and flogged. By February, more than 1,000 breadfruit plants were potted and prepared aboard the ship, but many of the sailors did not want to give up their easy lives in Tahiti. However, Captain Bligh was impatient to be away, and by April 1st, with a farewell from the Tahitian king, the HMS Bounty left Tahiti. As the ship settled at sea, Bligh attempted to reinstill his disciplinary regiment, but things were different this time. Bligh was impatient and would break out in fits of anger toward his crew, with Christian bearing the brunt of the captain's anger. On April 22nd, the Bounty arrived in Nomuka, in Tonga, then called the Friendly Islands, where Bligh knew from experience the people could act unpredictably. Bligh sent Christian ashore with a landing party, equipped with muskets to find water, but told him to leave the guns in his rowboat. Upon being harassed by the Tongans, Christian was forced to return without completing his mission, with Bligh calling him a damned cowardly rascal. Bligh further berated Christian and Fryer when the Tongans stole a small anchor and an adze. Bligh briefly detained the island's leaders, but nothing came of this. By the time the Bounty set sail, Christian was in a depressed, brooding state, which was enhanced when Bligh accused him of stealing coconuts from Bligh's private supply. Captain Bligh punished the entire crew for this, cutting their ration of rum off and their food by half. Christian considered building a raft and taking his chances with the islanders, and his discontent became common knowledge among the officers, who urged him not to leave. One of the officers, Edward Young, told Christian he would have the support of almost the whole crew if he were to attempt to seize control of the ship and depose Bligh. Thus, the men began to plan a mutiny. In the early morning hours of April 28, 1789, the Bounty was 30 nautical miles south of the Tongan island of Tofua. After a sleepless night, Christian decided it was time to act, gaining the support of several crew members and taking control of the ship's arms chest around 5:15 a.m. They then armed themselves and captured the captain and tied his hands. Bligh called as loudly as he could for help, waking Fryer, who the mutineers told to lay back down or be killed. Bligh was brought to the deck, where Christian waited with a bayonet. A crowd had formed to see what was happening. Bligh was calling for help, telling the men to attack Christian, but no one acted. Fryer was briefly allowed to speak, but then sent below deck. According to Fryer, Christian told him, "I have been in hell for weeks past. Captain Bligh has brought this on himself." Christian initially thought to set Bligh adrift on a small jolly boat, but it was not seaworthy, so the mutineers put Bligh in a larger boat, but around half the crew refused to partake in the mutiny, choosing to be set adrift with their captain. 3 men, the ship's 2 carpenter's mates and the armorer, were forced back aboard. They obliged, but pleaded with Bligh to remember that they remained with the ship against their will. Bligh assured them that he would do them justice if he ever reached England. The men who stayed with Bligh were given a compass, a quadrant, and Christian's personal sextant, alongside throwing 4 cutlasses into the boat as it was being lowered. In total, 19 men were crowded into the boat, including Bligh, while 25 remained aboard the Bounty, including the dedicated mutineers and the men detained against their will. Bligh hoped to find food and water on the nearby island of Tofua, then head to the Tongan main island of Tongatapu to seek help from the Tongan king before heading toward the Dutch East Indies, now Indonesia. Initial encounters with the Tofuans were friendly, but the islanders grew angrier as time went on. On May 2nd, the men attempted to flee the island, but the Tofuans grabbed a tow rope and attempted to drag the boat back ashore. One of the men attempted to jump into the shallow water to cut the tow rope, but was set upon and stoned to death. The men escaped into the sea, shaken by their encounter. Bligh decided to sail for the Dutch colony of Kupang in Timor, 3,500 nautical miles away. rationing 1 ounce of bread and a quarter pint of water to each man. The plan was agreed upon unanimously. The boat traveled west through harsh, stormy weather. They were the first Europeans to pass through the Fiji Islands, but did not stop due to the island's reputation for cannibalism. Bligh recorded their conditions on May 17th. Our situation was miserable, always wet, and suffering extreme cold, without the least shelter from the weather. By May 28th, the men saw birds and the Great Barrier Reef. They found a gap and sailed to a small island off the coast of Australia, Bligh called Restoration Island, where the men ate oysters and berries. The party island hopped northwest through the lagoon, with the native aborigines monitoring them from the mainland. Infighting occurred, and the relationships in the party began to strain due to the close confinement. Then the boat rounded Cape York, Australia's northernmost point, on June 2nd, and proceeded northwest toward Kupang, still over 1,000 nautical miles away. The next 8 days saw the men close to collapsing from dehydration when they finally saw Timor on June 11th. On June 14th, a small boat crowded with Bligh and his surviving men sailed into Kupang Harbor, hoisting a makeshift Union Jack. In Kupang, Bligh reported the mutiny, with a crew member succumbing to the harsh climate. The party departed for Batavia, now Jakarta, on August 20th. The ship's cook died there. Bligh obtained passage home in October of 1789. Bligh landed in England on March 14th of 1790. In October, Bligh was court-martialed for losing the Bounty, but honorably acquitted. In November, the British government decided it was time to bring these mutineers to justice, dispatching a ship called the HMS Pandora under Captain Edward Edwards to finally bring about their retribution. Thanks for watching.